sometimes it is very Christian to part company.
Yeah, absolutely.
As some Christians have a theology where they think everything's always about unity, unity, unity.
No.
I don't read that in the text. And if we had the time, I could theologize it. It was about really trying to convince people who were octogenarians. They were in their 80s, most of them, that you as a young guy actually are credible. Because at that time, you had to be 257 years old before you could be anointed or be called by God. If you're seen publicly by your denominational leaders going and talking to that person, it's going to create havoc for you in your own domestic denomination.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of tribalism in that context.
Yeah.
One of the understandings we've got to have is the difference, again, etymology teaches us the difference between two words that we tend to think are the same and they're not, which is being separate and being divided. Because we can be separate without being divided.
Yeah.
So Jesus was involved in an exponential growth of somebody's business because they consulted with Jesus for God ideas that would empower their business. A lot of church leaders are good at English but bad at maths.
Okay.
So they know Habakkuk but they don't know Luke.
All right.
Habakkuk says, write the vision, make it plain. Good at
Okay.
English.
Yeah.
Jesus said in Luke, consider the cost.
Hello, guys. Thanks for joining us again. Another Business of Church. You've got myself, there's Stewart, and
I'm Cory Belfon.
And welcome. Thanks for joining us. Today we have a fantastic guest, Pastor Mike White from the Tab Church.
My delight to be here, gentlemen.
Welcome.
Wonderful. Glad to have you here.
Good to be in the room.
Before we start, tell us about your journey. Was your journey in today, was it?
Journey to the studio
Journey
was
to the
crazy.
studio.
As
Yeah.
London traffic, as typical in any metropolis and capital, is going to be trying your emotions.
Yeah. I tell you
Now
what,
that everywhere's 20 miles an hour.
I was going
Exactly.
to say,
Exactly.
20 miles an hour. You might as well just jog.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier.
Feels
But,
unnatural to drive
yeah.
at that speed, but hey,
Yeah.
we made it.
We made it. We
Indeed.
made it. We
Good,
made it.
good.
Speaking of journey, just tell us a little bit about, Pastor Mike's background and your journey through to, from a young man to...
That's a
where
long
you are.
journey from a young man to now.
Paraphrase it real quick.
The thing is, that throughout your life, there's key milestones
Yes.
that took you in certain directions.
Yeah.
We like to try and navigate those.
Sure. Well, I mean, a whistle-stop tour of my life would be the fact that, I've always found myself in a leadership position, whether it's amongst friends, you tend to be the one who's a bit of an influencer, as it were, or whether it's my jobs escalating quite swiftly into managerial or leadership-like positions.
Yeah.
And then that becomes almost like a motif of your life. And then you find your ultimate purpose and destiny as a Christian. Of course, we talk about purpose and destiny and faith, etc. And so within the faith, I found myself leading a congregation. And so, that's a whistle-stop tour.
That's the whistle.
That's the whistle-stop.
In fact, so off camera, we was talking about the age at which you became
Yes.
the leader. I think it was like 24.
24, yeah. Began pastoring at 24, took over a Windrush church, I would call it, at the time. Completely different now. My dad was a Windrush minister who came here, planted probably directly or vicariously around 45 churches up and down the country. Nice. Most of those churches probably only reached mission-sized congregations, but they were still communities of faith with passionate, beautiful people, believers establishing themselves in the UK and became a station and a safe place for many of them, not only because of faith, but because of obviously the pressures and the microaggressions they experience on a day-to-day basis. And so I was always, as a child, with my siblings, I'm the baby boy. I was probably the least likely to be pastoring. Side eyes. We'll not talk anymore about that. Okay. We were always coming from church, going to church or at church. Even if we weren't there emotionally or psychologically. And then, of course, I had my time of discovery. The Bible says there's pleasure in sin for a season, and I demanded my season. Okay, I demanded
You
my
must
season.
have your season.
I
You
had
must-
my
you must-
season, bro.
You know what? Actually, just on a side note, we were talking earlier
Yeah.
about how appropriate it is to talk about our season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you know, where we are now.
Yeah.
But-
That season became a reoccurring season,
Okay.
and then God grabbed me, as it were.
Your Damascus Road.
Yeah, there you go. You have your epiphany. God grabs you. Sometimes has to grab you by the scruff of your neck
Yeah.
to
Seasons,
drag you into your purpose.
Yeah.
And I find myself right now today pastoring a phenomenal bunch of people who I love deeply. Just thinking about church life and what God is doing. The church is, I guess, in the UK context, a relatively large church. We're probably about 2,500 members now.
Nice.
And we've got a very strong digital base as well with what we call our e-tribe. Those are our online actual members, not just viewers.
Yeah.
And so God is good. We're trying to make as big an impact as possible and serve critically our generation.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Which certainly has a different feel to the generation that you would have taken
Absolutely.
over. Yeah.
There you go. You heard what I said there, then, definitely. Yeah. So that's part of one of our purposes, and our primary purpose vision and purpose and vision is to serve this generation.
Yeah.
So that means everything that we do is looked at through the lens, how we present the gospel.
Yeah.
You know, we are big, obviously we're a church, so it's going to sound like a given, but we are big Jesus people. You know, we love Jesus. We love the person of Jesus, and then we want to teach people the principles of Jesus and how those principles that are found in the ancient texts of scripture are applicable to your marriage, to your finances, and to your business life. And hence we find ourselves in the context of the studio today.
Yep, the business of church.
Indeed.
And I know you're a big exponent on business.
Yeah.
Tell us what your take is in relation to church leaders and how they should really view the church. Maybe the question is do you view the church as a business? Different type of business, because obviously business typically for profit and for shareholders. But in terms of income outgoing, how would you say the church is viewed? How should it be? How should it run from a business perspective?
Yeah, I think for me that, you know, if we look at the etymology and the definition of business really is trade for profit. So in that essence, no, because obviously we're Americans call it a not-for-profit organization.
Absolutely.
But by the same token, the structure and the mechanics have to be business-like. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
And so when it comes to your, me and our team, when we sit down in our board meetings and our team meetings, metrics are phenomenally important to us. If you don't know what's happening, you don't know where you need to be going.
You're speaking to this guy's heart.
Metrics.
Very hard.
yeah.
He's very hard, man. He's
You're the
right,
king of
right
metrics,
now.
guy.
He
I
love
get
a
it.
metric.
Yeah,
and,
no, it's vital.
and he must. It's vital.
Listen, I think on that point, just to hone in on that, I think we forget that biblically, the disciples were big on metrics. Why do we think, if you look at the Bible, then if any of the viewers who are Christians will remember texts that we read through and don't press pause and consider the purpose of them. Things like the fact that the Apostle Paul and his team, who included people like Luke, who we traditionally know was a doctor, they were big on metrics. Luke records that on the day of Pentecost, which was the birthday of the whole idea of the church, he recorded how many people were in the upper room. He said 120. Then later on, he tells us 3,000 got baptized. Then later on, he tells us 5,000. So we're getting metrics constantly through scripture. And I don't think that's something that should be ignored by church leaders. That was your initial question about church leaders and business. Because I think that psychology, in addition to the traditional facets of spirituality, prayer, fasting, believing, those things have to go hand in hand. I think you've got your left hand and your right hand. I think you've got your left hand with or you could swap it around if you prefer, but you've got your prayer, your belief, your vision, your preaching, your spirituality, your study. But as a church leader, your right hand, you need your metrics. You need to know, how are we doing? When I teach these principles to leaders around the globe, I get opportunities and invitations to facilitate roundtables and to do mentoring and consulting for church leaders. I call it your ABCDs as a pastor. As a pastor, you want to know, what was your church attendance? You want to know also, what about the church budget? Because especially if you're at our size, you've got staff to pay, you've got projects that are going on, all kinds of
It
stuff.
almost goes far as to say any size. Because
Any size.
your outgoings is going to be relative.
100%. So budget's always critical. Attendance, how many people are coming in, budget. C is conversions, how many people are accepting Christ, because that's our true,
Yeah.
purpose, introducing people to Jesus. And then, of course, especially post-COVID,
Yeah.
there's the D. The D is digital. What's your
Yeah.
digital appearance like? Because as I say, and I teach leaders all the time, if you're not digital, often you're invisible in this generation. And so these are metrics that we seek, we glean, and help us plan for the future and push forward.
How do you find people, maybe of the older generation, are sort of receptive to some of the things you're talking about there? Because, a lot of our experience is that, a lot of churches struggle with the mentality of having a more business approach to running a church. It's like, those things should stay outside and we just want to focus on the scripture. But they don't see that some of the things you're talking about are all part and parcel and are also included in the scripture. It's like they just ignore that because maybe they don't feel like they're confident in that. So when you're talking to people that are of that ilk, how do you find they respond to that, or how do you reach them?
Well, I think number one, you need to explain the why. It's not just that we're just saying we need metrics, but why, and show how this impacts what we're doing. Okay, so I think it's really explaining to people. Sorry to sound, well, I'm not sorry, but sounding very Christian-y. It's about love, and I think it was Paul Tillich, or one of the great theologians, said that the first act of love is listening. And so it's listening to why they are antithetical to it, and then explaining after that why it actually has an impact. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And then secondly, I think also you've got to understand that sometimes some people are just not called into that part of the ministry. That metrics, the business, if you want to call it, the science, the mechanic side of it is not for you. We actually need you to blossom and flourish in what you're good at. So while we're in the back looking through the metrics, you stay at the altar and pray for us.
How do you manage individuals who might otherwise stand in the way? Sometimes like when you was a 24-year-old and you've just come into, you're now going to run this church and you've got some hard nuts to crack. They're standing in the way of progress. How do you manage that?
Well, I think, number one, you manage it based on your own leadership proclivity and your aptitude, your idiosyncrasies. I'm built for war. I don't have a problem with people who may be, if we put it diplomatically, antithetical to the purpose and the vision that's been set forth. I'm willing to try with you and to sit down and explain, but I'm ready. If you're not coming with us, we're going to fly the plane anyway, and just push forward. So I think you give opportunity for harmony and for working in unity. But the truth be told, sometimes we just have to agree, as my biblical reference would be. Sometimes you just have to agree that, look, we're going to have to go our separate ways, and that's that. And if you're coming, come along.
Love this. He loves it.
He's on a phone call with our FC, last week, and she had some observations about my management style. Right. And my conclusion was, look, set high standards. If people want to be mediocre, that's fine, but they can leave. If they don't like what we're trying to accomplish, goodbye. Because at the end of the day, the mission is more important.
Absolutely. And although I said that, I'm built for war, I don't look for wars and I don't want a war. Exactly. And I'll do everything I can to stop a war. But at some stages, if somebody brings something that's going to be a hindrance, they're so against this, then we may have to have a fight. The Bible says,
Yeah.
There's a time for everything under the sun.
Absolutely.
A time for peace and a time for war. But at the same time, as a Christian, my proclivity and my purpose is to really seek some kind of understanding, seek some kind of peace.
I think
that's
that's
100%. Yeah. And I think sometimes we've got to realize also, sometimes it is very Christian to part company.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some Christians have a theology where they think everything's always about unity. No. I don't read that in the text. And if we had the time, I could theologize it. But I think sometimes you part company, but you part company respectfully.
Yes.
Don't make it personal, make it purposeful.
Yeah.
Let them go and fulfill their mission.
Yeah.
Wherever they feel.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Interesting. You was talking about when you was 24. One of the things...
you all keep talking about this 24 business.
No.
I'm starting to feel old about that. What's going on?
No.
You don't look a day
back when you was 24.
You're good.
No, but it's because when we did a podcast with Shane Bowes from
PCB now.
PCB
PCB
now.
now.
And one of the things I asked him about was the sort of imposter syndrome and what it's like to sort of be in a situation where, you might be a little bit younger than what people expect, and, you've got people that might be around you with a lot more experience, perhaps, etc., but you're the leader. Right? How did you ever suffer from a bit of imposter syndrome? What about you?
Do you know? I understand it. I know what it is. I teach on it, but I've not really, and I hate to sound. I hope this doesn't come across as having a lack of humility or arrogance. It's certainly not. That's anybody who knows me personally knows that's definitely not my spirit. But I've not really encountered much imposter syndrome. I think maybe my problems in leadership, especially with the church leadership when I first took over, weren't so much about imposter syndrome. It was about really trying to convince people who were octogenarians. They were in their 80s, most of them, that you as a young guy actually are credible. Because at that time, you had to be 257 years old before you could be anointed or be called by God. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that was that. I guess that's probably, I'm trying to find what the closest thing to imposter syndrome would have been that I'd have experienced. And so I had to meet them. I had to humble myself and meet them where they were. Meet them where they were, preach to them, and especially in a style that they were accustomed to, and present and earn my trust, or rather earn their trust. And so I think that was probably the closest that I've experienced. But I do know of many people who walk into situations with trepidation. I'm generally a confident type of guy. Of course, we all have me too. We all have our times of insecurities and times of feeling a little bit of doubt in ourselves and stuff. But it doesn't tend to affect me as much as some of my friends who I love deeply, and we sit down and talk and hang out about and have conversations about these kind of things. But yeah, so I think what I would advise somebody who has that imposter syndrome is to really look at parallels to them. Look at people around the globe who walked into situations that they've walked into with their lack of qualification or their lack of credibility, and look at those people and be encouraged by other people's stories. I think that's one of the, don't always focus on yourself. Look at where it's worked in other people's lives and realize, well, if it could work for them, then it can work for me.
Yeah, we've often sort of spoken about from a business perspective, but I guess you could look at any sort of walk of life. When you find yourself where you need advice, and advice seems to be hard to come by.
Yeah.
And especially sort of as when you're an entrepreneur and you've started on your journey, and there are always going to be things you just don't know. What's your advice to people who may need advice? And this is even pastors, and probably more so, especially for this podcast, especially pastors who they don't know what they don't necessarily know, but something isn't really working, whether the maths are not mathing up, and it's funny when you talk about the metrics in terms of maybe souls for the kingdom and things like that, budgets and just, the idea of how are you going to achieve your final goal, setting out your goals? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I don't think it's novel advice. I think my initial advice would be everybody needs a band of brothers or fathers, okay, who you can bounce ideas off of. If you feel the Holy Spirit saying something to you, if you feel like God's given you a vision, if you feel like there's an idea, a God idea, and it's not just a good idea, then bounce it off a crew. Everybody needs a band of brothers. I think one of the things I'm seeing in this generation even more so is that there's such a individualism going on. There's so much.
It's encouraged.
It is
their truth.
It is very much so. Very much so. Lots of individualism where we don't have a tight circle that we can go to, sit down. I've been blessed to have at least two of those. I've also got people I consider in my world, we'd call them spiritual fathers. People who are far older than me. Guys in fact, one of them just passed recently-ish, and those are guys I could call. They'd call me as well at any time of night, and especially from the States, not realizing the time difference. And I can bounce ideas off them, tell them how I'm feeling, be vulnerable, be cautious about, along with them being cautionary to me about things. And so I think you need that. And I think this generation, as you just articulated, is so schooled into thinking that any show of want to conversate is an admission of weakness.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's all right to be weak. Just say, look, I'm not sure about this one.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? What do you think? I think that's...
You know what? That's really interesting because, on one hand, sorry to interrupt your podcast. I just want to talk to you a little bit about our mobile apps. We have 2 apps, a management app and a member app. They're perfect for helping you run your church, stay in touch with your members, raise funds, and grow your community. So if you're looking for a mobile app solution, get in touch with Good to Give. Perfect solution for you. Now back to the podcast. You talk about, your confidence, etc., etc. And I often find that people always mistake, and this feeds into what happened to us, Des, on our business journey. Because you're confident, people think you've got all the answers. That doesn't mean that. So then when you're looking for advice, people think, like Des was saying just before this podcast, was saying, there's times in our business journey where we were really up against it. And, you might be telling people, oh, we're having these challenges. Nobody thought to offer us any advice or whatever. And then we look back and think, oh, well, how did you get on with that? Years later, how did you get on with that? Oh, maybe you could have done this or whatever. Well, why didn't you talk to us at the time? Well, at the time, you guys looked like you had all the answers. You guys, I used to look to you, and so on. So it's interesting. I like the fact that you were saying, you could be vulnerable with these people. And the challenge is building that network around you. That's, I think, part of the problem that you kind of alluded to. It's like, how do people go about selecting the right things? It's like a woman trying to select the right man. Many mistakes are made, right?
Or vice versa.
So the point is what sort of mentality, what sort of attitude should you have when you're trying to build this network of advice around you?
Well, I love the fact that you said build it. I think you build your safe space. Build your safe space based on sit downs with individuals, finding out if there's a synergy, if there's a synergy in terms of a chemistry as well, and then making that person one of the walls of that safe space. So if we're using the metaphor of a building, in this room now there's 4 walls, and so you set up those walls by kind of interviewing. You won't call it an interview, but you'll book an appointment, go and talk to people. I know one of the challenges in the church world with finding that safe space is people oftentimes are in networks or denominations, and the answer. You've been watching somebody, and the answer to your problem, you think that person could support, help, answer. But if you're seen publicly by your denominational leaders going and talking to that person, it's going to create havoc for you in your own domestic denomination. And there's a lot of tribalism in that context. And I think with that, we even get it, to tell you the truth. We get people DMing us and asking us how we're doing this, how we're doing that, what do you think of this? But you'll never hear from them publicly. They'll never show publicly. They'll never, or they'll never even acknowledge that they even know you publicly on a social context or anything. But I get it. For some of them, it's shade. I get it. But for others of them, it's dangerous for them because they can't be seen publicly to be reaching out to you. But I think, you get to the stage. It depends how hungry you are. If you're really hungry to push that business forward, if you're really hungry to push that church forward, if you're really hungry to push that ministry, charity, whatever it is, then your hunger will soon outweigh the concern for what others will think of you for consulting.
One of the things we talk about a lot in this podcast is how if all of the churches around this country, as in like the churches that we typically work and talk about, came together as a unifying force, something, and to be honest, there's a lot more in common with the people within there than apart. If they were to come together and unify their efforts in some sort of common cause, can you imagine the amount of change? Can you imagine the amount of positive things that could come from that? And it's like, why are we always kind of working in silos over there and have this sort of tribalism mentality? It's almost like, Africa being divided up back in that agreement, Berlin Agreement or whatever it was, and now everybody's kind of arguing amongst each other when, hold on, you're all one people. You all purport to believe in Jesus Christ. So why can't we all just work together and not have this sort of tribalism mentality? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's in humanity generally. I think there's a controversial point I'll make in a minute about that as well. But I think, one of the understandings we've got to have is the difference. Again, etymology teaches us the difference between two words that we tend to think are the same and they're not, which is being separate and being divided. Because we can be separate without being divided.
Yeah.
If I pull out a £5 note and I pull out a £10 note, they're separate. Yeah, but they're only divided if I tear them, because ineffectiveness kicks in when you're divided. But if you can be separate and still work together, and I think it's understanding what that working together looks like. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Without jeopardizing people's feel of their association with their denomination or network or whatever. I think also that sometimes, not all organizations, I don't think, should always work together. It's like sometimes it's going to be like trying to combine milk and orange. Both separately are great. Well,
It
depends.
It depends on the type of milk.
Depends on the type of milk you use, But put them together, we got curdling. And so I think we do need to analyze what if you collaborate based on the destination you're going in, based on your DNA, the synergy. I think there still needs to be some things done.
Would you consider collaborating with another church, as in like joining forces and like just unifying your church? It's almost like a merger.
Yeah, we have done before on projects. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
We have done on projects.
But I'm talking about the core of the church, as in
Just randomly merge with another church?
not randomly, selectively.
What purpose? Everything
to
has
be
to
bigger.
We're too big as
to
it is.
Consolidate resources, be able to reach more people, achieve more things.
We've done that on projects. I think it works on projects. I think that's like saying, why doesn't Nando's and KFC get together? Just because they're both in the chicken business.
Yeah.
I don't think that's
And not only that, my analogy to that, and I often, sometimes people get me totally confused, so let's make sure it's really clear here. I say there are so many different types of pubs, right?
Yeah.
And I might like drinking in that pub because they show sports and they do X, Y, and Z, whereas that pub down the road never has sports on. All they got is, I don't know, the news on TV, whatever it is. And different people need different things.
100%. As I said, the Nando's and the KFC analogy I only selected because they both are successful in the business of chicken.
Yes.
But one serves a clientele who wants to come, grab a box, and generally go. The other one, you want to go in, sit down, and you want a little bit different type of seasoning.
Want to feel slightly healthy.
Yes, it's a different. So I think what you find with churches is that you've got, we spoke about earlier, you grew up in a very traditionally white Catholic context. And some people that would not sit well with their Afrocentricity, as many of us, and I'm just using culture in that context as a quick example. It's far deeper than that. But there's some people who want to be in an environment where there's exuberant praise, not a stoic tradition of liturgy. That stoic tradition of liturgy is going to be disconnected from their Afrocentricity, and where you've got another group of people who we want to be exuberant and celebratory in our expression of worship. So trying to merge both of us would end up often causing
harm. Funny enough, actually,
causing more problems than.
Yeah, I was saying to Cory, I think it was last night when we was driving back, and I was sort of saying, there are a lot of churches now that have gone down this European stroke, strumming a guitar, and the level of praise and worship isn't as gospel felt as it used to be back in the day. Musicians really, and that's just a simple analogy of why some people would go to one type of church versus another.
But that's going to. But at the same time, those both those groups that I just articulated and described, they could work together on a project that would impact the community.
Without question.
Let's get together. Let's merge some of our resources and let's help the homeless.
Yeah.
Let's merge together. Let's get our resources. Let's start a school of economics. So project-based collaboration is what brings real transformation.
Would you suggest then a sort of central entity which contacts various churches and tries to sort of rope them in on centralized projects, or do you think it's the sort of thing that would happen by, say, your church having an idea and then going out and courting other churches and say, do you want to join us on this? Or do you think it needs to be somebody a bit more neutral? Let's say like us, Good to Give, we're a sort of neutral entity. We deal with over 500 different churches across the country. So we could be like a unifier and say, look, this is an initiative. Who's interested in getting involved? Who can help, etc. Which approach do you think?
Yes.
Yes, right, okay.
In other words, I'm being slightly trite there, but the point is,
No, I loved it.
in other words, all those approaches, I think it's like you used the analogy earlier about finding your future husband or wife. Did you find them on a dating app? Did you work together and then meet? Did your friend introduce you?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the journey to the collaboration or the connection is not so much the issue; it's the fact that you do have the connection. So, in my response to you would be, yeah, I think it could work with a independent organization recognizing a need, then writing to our church and writing to the church up there and say, look, would you collaborate with us and let's impact this particular area? 100%. But it also works where me and another church leader meet at a common event. We have a chat, we have a conversation and a coffee. We're like, you know what? You know that thing that's going on in Tunbridge or in, I don't know, Essex or in Hampstead? You know, it'd be good if we could try and, because I know you're doing something in your church and I'm doing, say, how about we unite and try and maximize or increase our impact there? So it can work
Do you
in
think
different
those types
ways.
of conversations happen in real life?
I've had those
You've had
conversations.
those?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We believe, again, I don't want to sound trite and cliche, but collaboration breeds transformation.
Yeah.
And we've had that with other ministries and other ministers and other charities, not just churches. We've partnered with other charities to make impact who aren't faith-based.
Yeah.
So for me, for us to make an impact in the community doesn't require you believing in Jesus.
No.
Does that make sense?
You're is it a bursar or you're what is it? You advise the
Dean on the-
Borough Deans,
Borough
Deans,
that's it,
we have that in our community,
Yeah.
in our, I should say borough, absolutely, who are advisory board to the mayor, collaborating with the local council on answers to some of the problems in our community.
Do you find it effective, or is it like a tick box sort of vanity project from the government's perspective as opposed to
No, it can be effective.
Smiling fingers.
political answer? Ching.
No, it can be effective. It can be effective. Of course, with any collaboration, there has to be an understanding of boundaries, an understanding of what are your hard lines, what areas. Okay, let's leave that alone because we can't agree on that together, but we can agree on this. So let's be positive and move forward on what we can agree on. So it just takes maturity and leadership and the want to.
Okay. And have you, in practice, found that it actually works with these guys, or?
Yes, on occasions, and on other occasions, we realize actually that might not be for us, or they realize that might not. More so, they might realize it might not be for them.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially in a very secularized culture now, where sometimes association with faith and faith
it's
groups.
seen negatively.
Yeah, we're not America. One of the things America still has is that's not a problem for them for the most part.
Yeah.
Whereas we live now in what is called sociologically a post-Christian culture, and I would go further to say it's almost post-religious to some degree. Of course you've got religions here, but I think the association with faith and religion sometimes is something that the secular powers don't want.
It's funny, actually. It would almost appear that that's more true in terms of the Christian faith as opposed to other faiths. When you start looking at, if let's say Muslim sect or another sect decide they want to build a temple or a mosque or something like that, it's almost like, we're going to find a way to make that happen. But to have churches operate in rented halls, in industrial environments, they'll shut that whole place down. I've seen it happen in two very key areas, one up in Tottenham, one down off the Old Kent Road, just in fact, I'd say near Millwall State. And I'm talking about in industrial places where nobody dwells on a Sunday, but the churches go in there and have a time of worship. Have you not found that to be the case? Or
I mean, I've heard stories. I have to agree with you. I've heard stories very similar that make you do ask the question: is this something personal towards the Christian faith? So I'm very aware of stories like what you've mentioned. For us personally, we've experienced difficulty sometimes with some of the bureaucracy. But I don't think that was necessarily just a faith thing. Sometimes I think it's also a race thing.
Yeah.
And so there's there's those issues to do with. There's lots of hurdles that society still needs to climb over because, from my perspective, through a biblical lens of the fallenness of humanity and sin and the way we prejudge and the way we have all these isms, whether it's racism, sexism, ageism, that cause division.
Have you heard about this sort of rising topic of the tree and the fruit, which is, in terms of Christianity, there seems to be more of a leaning and an emergence of people concerned with the fruit, which is meaning that they believe in the acts and the outcomes of Christianity, but they don't actually believe in, the core of, as in like Jesus. But, so there's a lot of people that are saying, yeah, there's a term for it. I don't know if it's like casually Christian or there's some sort of, but there's a lot of people that are coming out and saying, they support Christianity, but they don't believe in it. And, I don't know whether you're seeing like an emergence of that, because I think that a lot of people are saying that it's because of the way culture is evolving, like what you was just talking about. People are a bit lost because there's a spiritual void. So you're seeing all these other little, whether it's transits or whatever it is, all these different sort of things coming to feel like this sort of spiritual void. But then, people are looking at it and thinking, doesn't really work. The Christian, solution is tried and tested. It works. So they believe in the outcomes, but they're not prepared to cross that line and say that they believe, they still think like what you was talking about when your mum was comparing the
funny
one
story.
Faith to the other, and she laughed at their origin story. But then when you paraphrase the Christian origin story, she said, "Yes, that is correct." You know what I mean? It's like that sort of scenario.
Yeah, I think what you get, at a lower shelf level, I guess, what you got is people who like the effects of the Christian philosophy, Christian theology. Who wouldn't love the golden rule? Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you.
Yeah.
That's
beautiful.
That's a beautiful rule to set up any civilization.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But what oftentimes people don't like is the responsibility that acknowledging the Christian morality, ethics requires of you. And in this culture that we find with so many blurred lines, where boundaries have been removed, blurred lines have been removed, there's no longer wrong or right. It's whatever you feel is wrong or right. However you feel is wrong or right. And then we use this so long as I'm not hurting anybody.
Yeah.
But actually,
that's the caveat, right?
Actually, whatever you feel is wrong or right will eventually hurt somebody.
Yeah.
And so we just don't want society often just doesn't want the responsibility to say, yes, we believe in love. Yes, we believe in unity. Yes, we believe in the golden rule of do unto others as you'll have them do unto you. But actually, I don't want to acknowledge the Christian God who also requires me to be in relationship with him and to live my life according to his principles. That's the part people sometimes want to push away until they get true revelation of the gospel.
So that's why you think it's this sort of emergence is prevalent, because people are like, okay, it's convenient to take the good, but they just don't want their responsibility. Okay. Yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, should we draw some of the formal questions?
Yes. Why don't we?
All right. So, what does the Bible say about entrepreneurship? is one of the questions.
Yeah.
What does the Bible say about entrepreneurship?
Well, I think what we've got to remember is the Bible has things that are written to us and also things that are written for us. Things that are written to us directly, especially as Christians, and also things that are written for us to learn from. One of the things that I think is worth raising on that point in terms of what does the Bible say, how does it teach, what does it express? God, from the very get-go, from the book of Genesis, the book of beginnings, the characters in those scriptures were all business people. If you talk about what we call, or who we call the father of faith, Abraham. Abraham was a multi-millionaire equivalent businessman, livestock, agriculture, because obviously that was the context of the day. There was no, exactly. But the point is that the Bible's quite explicit about the fact that he was a wealthy individual and he was a businessman. If I run all the way through to any of the key characters, you'll see business is a critical part of their lives. Let me jump into the New Testament. And we forget that the context of the people Jesus called to be his disciples, called them out of the context of being businessmen. They were businessmen. Peter, fisherman.
Yeah.
Fishermen and farmers.
Yeah.
Fishermen and farmers. That teaches us two principles, in my opinion, that are worth raising here. Number one, fishermen and farmers, they're both businessmen. Their boats were their business. Jesus also used their boats to help his ministry. He preached from the boat. Also, you've got the principle of the fact that if he chose fishermen and farmers, then Jesus is obviously also teaching us about the principle of process, because both fishermen and farmers have to go through process in order to get what they're trying to get. A fisherman has to get the bait, get the line, put the line in the water, whatever else, or the net, as it were, and wait. There's a waiting process. There's a discipline to that. There's also farmers. Farmers understand seed, sowing. All seasons. And so two things I see there. I see Jesus finding value in calling businessmen into ministry with him. He said, "Come with me, and I'll show you how to be your fisherman. Come with me, and I'll show you how to be fishers of men."
Yes.
So there's something about what you do I can actually use in ministry and in the kingdom. So there's a collaboration and a connection there already. Their boats were their business. And then going back to something we were talking about earlier, and I know this word collaboration keeps popping up, partnership, that I think is something we need to encourage more in church and in especially the Afro-Caribbean and African community. But there's one particular story in the Gospels where these fishermen followed Jesus' instructions, and they'd been trying to fish all night, hadn't caught any fish. He said, "Look, try the other side." So they connected their spirituality and received divine God ideas how to maximize their business. They threw the net on the other side, and they caught so much fish their boat couldn't contain it. So they had to go into partnership and call their friends over to come and listen. Let's share the load. Let's work this thing out together. So Jesus was involved in an exponential growth of somebody's business because they consulted with Jesus for God ideas that would empower their business. So at a deeper level, through the stories and the narratives of the Gospels and through looking in the book of Genesis and some other areas in the Old Testament, you'll see that this context of God being for business constantly spoken about and talked about.
Yeah. I didn't think you were going to get all that, did you?
Yeah, no.
This face,
Was that too long an answer?
No. It does get you looking at things very differently.
Yeah. No, I mean, because Des and I mean, the reasons why we start this podcast is because, we became a little bit, not disillusioned, but just frustrated. And we just saw that there just was a lot of mentality out there that was just not business-like, just making business decisions. When you're trying to sell services and you're trying to say, well, look, we'd love to give them for free, but, we wouldn't have a business if we did. And I hate the fact that we've often said to ourselves, if we had to, and it's controversial, but if we had to wait for, churches to pay us after delivering the service,
wouldn't have a business.
We wouldn't have a business.
Yeah.
That's kind of sad because we've come from the secular business. We had quite a large secular business. And yes, you got bad debt, but there was an understanding, right? There's understanding. You get an invoice, you pay it.
Yeah,
right?
You understand you might give 30, 45, 60 days credit, but it's going to be paid.
It's going to be paid. Whereas, with experience, you make an agreement, everything's clear presentation, so on and so forth. Then when money's on the table, then the argument and the negotiation starts. It's like, well, hold on, we've already done all of this.
Yeah.
So, we just really saw that there was this.
I'm sorry you've experienced that from the church. That's not a great testimony.
I'll be honest with you.
Church,
and it's
not our church. Let me put it out.
But
I know.
And it's not. And let's be honest.
Just for the podcast record.
Yeah. No, and I'll be honest. It's not all. We used to find a lot more of that earlier on in the day. There was a lot more of that earlier on in the day. There's still some of it now, which kind of leads me to think. I mean, I've go around and I see pastors all over. I've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of pastors, and it's funny. Sometimes you have to, just like in any business, sometimes you have to say to yourself, should that person be running that business? It's a real question.
And they don't really have, like we said, they haven't built the team around them to help them make the decisions. and they're going off, a lot of the time what they really want to do is go off trust. I trust you. I don't know what you're saying. I don't understand the math, but I trust you. But then when the bill comes and it's like, then that's when the due diligence starts, and that's the
You
I
you
think-
find a lot of church leaders. Here's the way I'd put it, just for to make it a bit of fun. They're good at maths, but they're bad at English. Or rather, let me rephrase that. A lot of church leaders, we'll start it again. A lot of church leaders are good at English, but bad at maths.
Okay.
So they know Habakkuk, but they don't know Luke.
All right.
Habakkuk says, write the vision, make it plain. Good at
Okay.
English.
Yeah.
Jesus said in Luke, consider the cost.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of leaders who can write a vision, but don't also then have the consideration of the cost. And I'm not wrong. I'm not having a go at them for that. What I would say though is you need people around you who can count the costs. And this goes back into the whole collaboration and partnerships and teams.
Yes.
From the book of Genesis, I don't want to get preachy, forgive me. But from the book of Genesis, let's not forget, Genesis says this. God said, we're going to create man. And then he says, God created humankind, male and female created he them, and God blessed them. He told them, be fruitful, multiply. God blessed them.
That's right.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
The blessing, first of all, in the book of Genesis arrives on a them, not a him or a her.
Yeah.
So there is a blessing that comes on collaboration and partnership.
Yes.
And I think if we want to see our ministries blessed and our leadership blessed, we need to collaborate and partner with people around us in our teams who know more than us about certain things. Yeah, God can give you a vision.
Which is another challenge that, again, business people, church ministers alike seem to struggle to find people or want to find people that are better than them.
I mean, they'll try to bring people into the church, but then it's also a case of remuneration, burning out the good people. We all know about the churches. They got one good person that's reliable and
that
clever,
person like
and
that.
everything floods to that person until they run from the church, because they're burnt out. And so, But look, we're getting signals that we're kind
Are
of,
we almost done, are we?
Not
fair. You're going to have to come back again.
Time ran away, huh?
Let's go through
Okay, so what's the next
I
question?
think we've kind of
Should-
covered that third
Okay.
one.
Okay. Let's go to the last one then.
Yeah.
What do you think the future of... Okay, so what do you think the future of biblical entrepreneur should look like? What do you think the future of a big biblical entrepreneur should look like?
The future of a biblical
Entrepreneurship.
Entrepreneurship. Yeah.
Biblical entrepreneurship should look like, number one, as people of faith. If we're talking about biblical entrepreneurship as people of faith, everything starts with motive. The motive can't just be, and I'll use another word, it needs to be making a difference, not just making money.
Yeah.
I think that's the critical thing that makes us different. And I think from a spiritual perspective, that's what God partners with. And then you can make money, of course. You can help people serve the kingdom, bless people as a result of whatever money you've made. But I think it starts with asking yourself, am I making a difference? How am I representing Christ? Am I being light in the darkness? Not light at the darkness, which many Christians are very good at. Very good at waving our finger and telling the darkness how bad you are, rather than actually being in there and making a difference, whether it be in the educational world, whether it be in the corporate world, financial world, whatever it might be. When you're in there, go into business, do your thing, push forward, but ask yourself, my motives need to be not just about making money. Yes, please make some money, but also about making a difference and representing Christ in those areas.
Sounds like our motive for starting Good to Give.
Yeah.
Making a difference. All right. So as a run, there's always we got some quick fire questions. So we're just going to run through them. What TV or YouTube show are you watching right now?
Right now, I'm not really watching much, to be honest with you. I ain't got time to watch one. I'm doing a lot of writing.
Right.
So that kind of time has been taken up. My favorite movie I've always got time to watch The Godfather.
Okay.
I've always got time to watch that. That's a classic.
Which one is it? 1, 2, 3?
I think I like 2.
Okay.
I think I like 2.
Okay.
Yeah, 1 and 2.
Okay.
It's funny. Just quickly. How do you feel about your parishioners and and what they consume in terms of on the internet, and are there particular, like for instance, you used to be on, I think it was up in Wembley, TBN. How do you feel about your parishioners, consuming media? What's your advice, or how do you feel?
I mean, it's part of our culture. Absolutely consume media, just like anything, though. Even in your own physical diet, be careful of what you consume. So watch and eat, but don't watch and eat everything.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the key thing, you know. We're not there, and I'm not there to be your spiritual policeman.
Yeah.
You know, because somebody needs to watch what I'm eating and consuming as well. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So I think for me, my advice, my response to that rather than advice would be, of course, it's culture. Grab a movie, you know, watch an Amazon show, a Netflix show, fine, but we just don't watch everything because not everything's good for us, and only you, when you're transparent and honest with yourself, will know what's dangerous or not good. Let me put it that way for you.
Yeah,
For you.
yeah.
Yeah.
I only asked that question because I asked a minister that question a few weeks back in a meeting with them, and it was explicit. We don't get them to watch anything, only what we produce.
Good luck with that. I think you may be deceived.
Maybe.
Because people might tell you they're not doing it, but what are you putting spy cameras in their house? To
Yeah.
see
Who knows? Who knows? Eh? Who
One
knows?
unwind at the end of the
Who
day.
knows?
Yeah.
Okay.
You go for it.
Yeah. What's your?
You do the next two. I want to do that one.
Which one do you want?
I want to do the last one.
Oh yeah. That's you all day long. I mean, I wouldn't even take it from you. I mean, it's your
No,
question.
You take those.
Okay. So, what's your favorite podcast or website?
Oh,
Be careful here now.
good to give, of course. You know?
Wow.
I've got a plethora of them that I listen to. I tend to listen. As I said, my penchant, my niche is really leadership. So I have a proclivity towards anything leadership stuff.
Yeah.
To do with leadership stuff that I listen to online and on podcasts. I could name a load of them. But anything leadership,
Anything.
I tend to be drawn to when it comes to podcasts. Yeah.
Okay. Is there a specific person that you sort of like the most?
I like a lot of them. I think from a
Director,
church.
CEO or anything like that.
From a church perspective, probably Cory Newhoff's leadership podcast I like. I think that's very worthy because he interviews leaders from a cross section of church and a cross section of society.
Right.
And so I think that becomes good for a healthy diet of hearing other people's perspectives concerning leadership and leadership challenges in this generation, especially post-COVID.
Yeah. Okay. My last question, penultimate one. What's your favorite pastime outside of ministry?
Reading. I'm a nerd. I love to read. I'm trying to get back into shooting clay pigeon.
Okay.
Who's planning it? We're planning
Clay
it.
pigeon shooting, yeah, really. And my friends in America, all my friends, I've got some major pastor friends in America, and they're always trying to get me to start up golf. And I always promise myself, and then it doesn't happen. So I want to try.
Have you ever even played any golf?
I have, not well, but I have, yes. And I need to start picking that back up again, yeah. So, but primarily, I love reading. I'm a readaholic. I love reading.
Nice.
Okay.
Not novels.
Yeah.
I'm talking about informational books.
Yeah. What was the last book you read?
Oh my gosh, you caught me off guard now. I like Destined to Witness. Destined to Witness. I think that was what the title was. It was about interesting. Strange book was about growing up mixed race. A guy who grew up mixed race in Nazi Germany
That sounds
and
like
ended
some
up becoming the editor of Ebony magazine.
Okay. Interesting.
I know, strange. But hearing his journey, because we're so used to hearing about Nazis and obviously their horrific persecution of Jewish people.
Yeah.
But you forget there are other cultures and races there who went through their dramas as well. So hearing his journey has been really, reading about that was quite intriguing, you know. So, yeah.
Lovely.
Okay.
Last question's on you.
So, what are your thoughts on AI and how you think it might impact society? You know, things like, you know, your opinions on maybe pastors using it for sermon research or indeed actually holding sermons, you know, broadly. How do you feel about AI? Do you use it? Are you up on it? Or you sort of like don't know much about it?
I think AI is great. I think AI is like, I'd answer that question in the same way I'd answer, what do I think about knives? I think about in the right hands, they're amazing. A surgeon could use a knife to save a life, but a murderer, you know, no, we don't want you having a knife ever again. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So for me, I think it's just like any technology. I think depending on whose hands it's in, I do think we need to be cautionary about it, or cautious, I should say, about it. And I know there's been cautionary notes expressed by people who are involved in the design of it, who have asked government to legislate it, to bring laws because they see the potential for it to do harm.
Yeah.
But there's so much potential for it to do good. In terms of research, it's an advance to Google.
Yeah.
It's an advanced evolution of the internet. And so by virtue of that, I think it can be used appropriately, absolutely. Now, if you're going to ask AI to create a pastor who's going to deliver a sermon to a congregation, I think we've crossed the boundary. I think there's some boundaries there we've broken. But if you're going to use it to research, to help with information that will bring revelation and help bring transformation to somebody's life, great, rock and roll, absolutely.
So you think if you used an AI avatar, which has been done actually, an AI avatar with the whole knowledge of every biblical text in the world, and you charge it to be charismatic and you put it up on a screen in a church, you don't feel that that's a legitimate way of communicating the gospel to...
No, I don't think so. I think there's something that, if we go back to the beginning, that Jesus set up that requires human interaction and the Spirit of God flowing through a human. I think the incarnate, without getting too deep now in theology, but I think the incarnation tells us about how God was in Christ reconciling the world to himself. And I think then we now have been told we have been given the ministry of reconciliation. So it needs to be God in us,
Yeah.
ministering the gospel and talking to people and expressing love in a genuine way, not a programmed way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Big differentiator.
Conscious.
Yeah.
Being conscious. Yeah. Okay. And on in terms of society now, because clearly there is going to be an impact. Clearly, you're going to have a situation where, robotics is advancing, especially in the last couple of years. It's advancing at a massive rate. The brain is practically there. The two are going to be combined. So in 10 years,
You can ask me if
you're
I'll
gonna have-
baptize a robot.
But what do you think the purpose of humanity, or you're a human, what's their purpose going to be when an AI and a robot can do everything we could do but better?
Well, I
Or
think
the majority of what we could do but better.
Yeah, well, look, on my car right now, there's a facilities where I can set it to actually monitor the cars in front of me, to monitor me staying in the lane. And so I think if technology can be used as a tool, not a taskmaster, then that's fine, so long as it remembers its place.
But if it's doing a lot of the tasks,
Yeah.
and then we don't have a place
Yeah.
in the GDP of a country, let's say 30, 40, let's say 60% of the jobs, 80% of the jobs is capable of being done by a humanoid robot, right? And it sounds far-fetched, but it's really like you're talking in a few years' time. There's already robots working in Tesla doing useful jobs, right? So the point is, and these are humanoid robots, general purpose. I'm not talking about specific robot arm things. I'm talking about a general purpose robot. So the point is what do we do when we're in a society where our agency doesn't, for a lot of people, come from the work that they do? When we don't have that as a motivation, what do we do as a society?
Well, I
What do we become?
hope to vaccinate that. I don't want to have to medicate it. Medicate it is doing something about it after it's happened. I'd like to vaccinate it by preventing it from happening.
So you think
by
prevention-
placing boundaries in place.
Right,
And I think
okay.
that's what some of the tech, if you go online, you will see the amount of tech experts who are responsible. They are responsible for creation of things like AI and its evolution and its progression. But they are specifically asking for legislation. They're asking for boundaries to be put in place, maybe because they can see what you're describing.
Yeah.
And so I think it's good that we support those individuals and help vaccinate that problem from ever arising.
Okay. All right. So you're about the proactive.
Being proactive.
Usher it in, because there are benefits to be had, but let's be cautious and let's be pragmatic about its effect on society, and let's try to inoculate society so that I think, personally, I feel it's challenging, because where does that line draw?
I'm just thinking to myself, at what point, as a business owner who can get more productivity from this particular AI, which is going to increase the income and reduce the expenses.
Exactly. This is what I'm saying, is that you're always going to be in that situation, and company structure, shareholder value, similar with globalism. jobs going abroad because it can be done cheaper, when you then have a country whose GDP is no longer tied to the people in the country, and you're no longer limited by the amount of people that actually live in your country, because you can manufacture 1,000, 1 million robots a year. Suddenly, you're in a situation where, what are people going to do? People are not going to, and I don't think it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult to legislate against that, because you're going to have corporate interests versus societal interests, and we've seen how that often plays out in the end. Corporate interests by talking puppets that get into society and further their interests. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, I mean, look, the fact is that we can only vote for politically the people who are going to help make sure that that doesn't happen, because otherwise we'll see an increase in individualism. There'll be a disassociation of humanity from humanity's purpose, and I can't see that producing anything positive. And so, going back to what I said at the beginning, I love AI. I love technology. I think it's very necessary, but so long as it remains a tool and not our taskmaster, we're good.
And on those wise words, we wrap up the end of this podcast. So thanks everyone for watching and listening. Hopefully you got some pearls of wisdom there. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're on all of the major platforms, and stay tuned. And I look forward to the next season coming up, because we've got some great people, lined up. So stay tuned.
So, Pastor Mike, thank you very much. It's been
for coming
entertaining.
My delight, gentlemen. My delight.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.